At Perkins Will, for many, many years, we've been striving to set the agenda when it comes to sustainability. We've got to move beyond just being sustainable and actually think about how we can deliver design that can help to regenerate the damage that's been done over the last few hundred years. And so, sort of sustainability for us is now kind of baseline. We've got to move forward from that. Sustainable design, regenerative design, putting that at the heart of what you do is fundamentally good for business. And so that's the level of data and transparency that we need to have in order that clients make informed decisions. A lot of it is actually around great design opportunity and craft. That whole process is really where the opportunity is, and that will lead to us delivering and designing projects differently. So for me, it's process, not projects. Really a big impetus of the kind of work that we've been trying to do at Perkins Will.
Hello and welcome to the next edition of the Specialist View podcast, brought to you by Specialist Group. I will be your host, Kieran O'Hagan, and throughout the series I'll be taking this opportunity to speak with key people within the industry and learn about how their companies have come to be, gaining an insight into their growth and how they continue to innovate, be sustainable, and so on. So, wherever you have tuned in from, we hope you enjoy, and we hope that it is someone out there learns one wee bit from our conversation of today. Thank you. Today I'm joined by Adam Strudwick, Principal at Perkins Will. Thank you for joining us, Adam.
Great to be here.
Before we begin, I'm going to give you a little background on Adam, and correct me if I'm right or wrong. Adam is an experienced design principal with over 20 years working in the global architecture and interior design industry. Adam is skilled in strategy, design and delivery for multi-sector clients across the EMEA and is leading the way in voicing the actions the industry needs to make sure that we have a more sustainable world for our children. With action needed now and the need for greenwashing to start, we discuss what the industry needs to do and the importance of designing for disassembly in the industry. So, Adam, at this point, it's over to you. Would you like to give our listeners a wee bit more information about yourself?
Well, that was a very kind introduction. Thank you. No, I think you said it all, really. I mean, we at Perkins Will, for many, many years, we've been striving to set the agenda when it comes to sustainability, and in fact, all the different facets of what sustainability means. And I'm really proud to be part of that. We're lucky that we get to work on some really inspiring projects with some great clients. We've got an amazing team that I work with, and those things help to contribute to some of those kind of goals that you talked about there. We're more interested now in the word regenerative.
Yep.
Hard for me to say, but we've got to move beyond just being sustainable and actually think about how we can deliver design that can help to regenerate the damage that's been done over the last few hundred years. And so, sort of sustainability for us is now the kind of baseline. We've got to move forward from that.
So just for our listeners, Adam, and for myself, from my own knowledge, regenerative sustainability is about taking it back to a baseline. Regenerative is about potentially doing stuff that takes us below the baseline to slow the whole process down. All sustainability will do is bring it to a level.
Yeah, sustainability. To be sustainable is to kind of do no harm. To stay where we are, and also to erode a little bit on what the damage that we've done. But that's not going to get us to where we need to get to. We need to start to give back and to regenerate the planet. So sustainability really is just about minimizing harm. Regenerative design is about giving back and being more positive, being more proactive positively.
Yes. Thank you for explaining that. Most people will probably understand that, but I didn't. So you're doing great work yourself as an individual, and I take it you're backed by the business and you communicate that very clearly. But it's also good to be, it's the individual that's driving it. What do you believe the greatest sustainability advice would be for young people today that's thinking of getting into the industry, or all those that are currently in it, from a design perspective?
Gosh, that's a big question. I mean, I think advice would be to care. Like, I think if you do really care about these issues in a meaningful way, that just helps. It helps you to be more authentic. It helps you to make the right decisions. It helps people to believe in what you're saying. It helps you to convince people to try things differently. So, if you really care, I think that helps. So that would be the first thing. I think the second thing is to understand that sustainable design, regenerative design, putting that at the heart of what you do is fundamentally good for business, and I think that that's really helpful. And any company that doesn't kind of embrace that aspect of what we're trying to do, I think is probably missing a little bit of the reality of what's going on. Is like, great sustainable design should lead to more clients. It should lead to better work. It should lead to better development and better innovation. The third thing I'd say would be think about process, not projects. I think when I first started getting into this and really spending more time on it, maybe kind of 5 or 6 years ago, I always thought, if we can do a little bit better on every project, that's going to make a big difference. And it does. Every project you can make, incremental changes. But the only way we're going to get to, the change that I feel that we need to make is by really looking at the process of how we do things. And so, just doing a little bit better on each project is not enough. We have to fundamentally change how the construction industry, how the design industry, how the architectural industry works in terms of the process, how we work with contractors, how we work with subcontractors like yourselves. That whole process is really where the opportunity is, and that will lead to us delivering and designing projects differently. So for me, it's process, not projects, is kind of like really a big impetus of the kind of work that we've been trying to do at Perkins Will.
Very good. That leads me on, not it's just a bit of a conversation with ourselves, but like me personally, for our business, it's quite important to us what we do in the future. For me as a father, it's important to leave a better world, hopefully, whenever we leave here. And I think that's, in the last 10 years, it went from potentially sustainability may have been like a tick box exercise. Now it has become reality, and I think it's starting to pick up the traction that it needs, and it needs to get more. But like, some of the ideas that we've had would incorporate from the very base build of a building. So I believe that we have a potential that we could build. You talk about process. We could build all door openings. We could have standard size door openings, potentially 3 different sizes. That would mean that if we wanted to change that building around for something else in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, we could take them doors off and put them into another building because the other building's openings would be the same size.
Yeah.
So I think that's when you're talking about process, that's just an example of thinking about the whole process rather than the project. If we simplified the structural things slightly, then they could make almost anything modular fit within a building, and you could turn it around to. Yeah. That's sort of my own little idea. What do you think of that?
It's definitely part of that. I mean, in London now, when you're putting in a planning application for most new buildings, you also have to put in a circular economy statement, and so that sits alongside the design and access statement, and that's a really great piece of progress. Is that for people to get planning on a new building, they have to be thinking about how that building is a circular product. Whether it's reuse of steel structures, which is a big topic for debate, whether it's designed to have multiple use cycles, which is what you're kind of talking about. So, having to have architects and developers thinking about the circular product of their building at the planning stage, and to put in a kind of planning design document that kind of sets that out, is a really positive step. We could do that on interiors projects as well. So those sorts of things in certain cities are coming in. Other countries have been way ahead of us when it comes to these sorts of things. People say Holland and the Nordics have been doing a lot of this for a lot longer than us, and they have. France have been doing some really cool stuff at like a consumer level. So yeah, it's about planning, but it's also about like how we buy projects. We're in a very busy market at the moment in London. Most projects are going to a sort of 2-stage procurement route. There's a great opportunity in terms of partnering more, having a much more open economy within the market where we share more. All these things are around the process of what we do, and they'll lead to kind of really big benefits in the medium term, I think.
And a better result for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So this 2-stage procurement route that we're comparatively in at the moment probably leaves a wee bit more room for that partnership to be formed. That's kind of what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really easy, and a lot of people say, you know, partnership and collaboration leads to great benefits in loads of things, and it does, it absolutely does, but you need to make sure that that's done in a way that's kind of focused and well managed. But certainly the earlier you can have conversations, the earlier we can have conversations with the actual people that make stuff, like you guys, you know, the better there, you know, the more time there will be to do good things, you know.
100%.
So, you know, we have to be competitive and all of those things. Of course, we have to leverage the market where we can. But if we have a bit more time to have more meaningful conversations, then that will have benefits in the longer term. You know, so the projects where we're doing this at a more kind of fundamental level are projects where we've kind of been able to drive the timescales to our advantage to support this. You know, to have a bit more time or to use that time in different ways to get better outcomes. You know, we're able to help develop the program and the schedule to support that. And if we, you know, on our smaller projects, which are often really quick, you know, it's not so easy. Of course, it's not so easy to try and inject that sort of new way of thinking into the work. So more time, you know, can be painful, but in this situation, if you use it well, it can be really advantageous.
Yeah. And that can work out well for everybody from a financial point of view and everything. What I'm hearing from you is if on the two-stage piece, it does, on a larger project, it does gives way to a wee bit more time, earlier engagement with people. I agreed, it all has to be a competitive market from a point of view of the end client, but the end client's value doesn't always come with money. And this conversation we're having today, it's about the sustainability of their building or the interchangeability of it and what they're doing for the environment. And that's becoming, in my world anyway, I think this we live in the same world here, it's becoming very important to a lot of end clients, where it was tick box, then it moved to the next stage. Now it's becoming like the Amazons of this world and so on are driving this.
Yeah, I think we're definitely seeing, in the same way we're seeing consultancies and designers be more authentic about this stuff. We're seeing clients be more authentic about it. You know, we know that, you know, shareholders and consumers care more about this now, and that obviously affects how businesses operate. We know that probably in the future there'll be taxation around carbon, the carbon footprint of organizations, and that will drive change. We know that a lot of our clients now who are operating in this space are, you know, looking to us and our wider design teams to balance carbon and cost in the same way. So to account for carbon in the same way that we account for pounds. So, you know, we have a budget at the beginning of the project. We develop and erode and design to that budget. We obviously try and buy smartly. We try and deliver to that budget. We try and VE. We try and, you know, get a final sum that meets that budget or betters that budget. We understand where we might have to spend a bit more. We understand where we might have to spend a bit less. You know, all of those things that we have always done for financial accountancy now happen for carbon accountancy as well. And if we can, you know, manage carbon in the same way that we, you know, conservatively or smartly manage cash, that's a really great way of looking at, you know, the cost of a project.
I wasn't even aware that existed within the industry. So that's
that's
a big thing.
No, carbon accountancy, you know, we work very closely with lots of partners now to measure, you know, the exact amount of carbon that goes into a project and be able to report on that throughout the early stages of the project and demonstrate to the client how we're driving that budget down. And we can say to the client, if you choose this route, it's going to cost you this much financially and this much from a carbon perspective. And if you choose this route, it's going to be other. In fact, we just bought a big staircase package for a project, and we had an option with a CLT stair and a steel stair, and we were able to present, you know, the cost, the carbon cost and the financial cost, along with some other kind of attributes to the client, and they were able to make a decision as to what manufacturing approach they wanted to take based on those kind of parameters. And so that's the level of data and transparency that we need to have in order that clients make informed decisions.
Good informed decisions with that. Yeah. That's brilliant even to hear that. And I suppose maybe I'm behind in this piece, but you've got your cost budget, which you can compare with now the carbon budget, and you can set out the 2 or 3 different options on the table. That'll drive change in itself.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, people will become aware of, you know, like if you're going shopping, you want to know what the budget is, right? Financially, but people need to be aware of the cost of their decisions from a carbon perspective as well. This is a life cycle carbon perspective, a whole life carbon perspective. And if we can get our designers and our partners and our clients thinking about that, you know, that's automatically going to make them more I think, considerate of what they spend from a carbon perspective.
See, even ourselves as a business, like we've been doing from a manufacturing point of view, I think we do quite a bit, but not enough, if that makes sense. So we burn all our own waste to heat the factories. I suppose it's a recyclable of an effect. Anything that's extra goes towards farm bedding. We buy all our electricity from green energy sources. We're doing 50% of that ourselves with solar generation. But it's not good enough to get to, hopefully we'll be net zero by the end of 2026. But even with that, the one thing I've discovered in the last sort of 12 months is our biggest carbon footprint, tons of carbon produced in the last 12 months was a leakage in our air conditioning unit.
Wow.
Just because of the multipliers and that. Whenever you're furnished with that data, you say, like, all the diesel we burn, all the electricity we buy, all the things that we're creating carbon around, that one leak caused more issues.
Yeah, amazing.
So it's kind of, we have a lot to do there to ensure these sort of things don't happen.
But that's kind of an example. I guess it's a extreme example of one of the other kind of big challenges that we have, and it's not really around the circular economy, but it is around sustainability. Is that unfortunately the most sustainable building is not the most sustainable building that was designed. It's the most sustainable building that was run in a sustainable way. And so, we need our buildings to, first of all, be busy. Like, the most sustainable building or the most sustainable thing is something that's well used. So, if you have a really sustainable building that's empty, you may as well have built it in a bad way. Yeah. So, we want our buildings to be vibrant. That's, we've already spent the carbon and the resources, let's use it. But also we need to learn to manage and run our buildings in a sustainable way. We need to help educate the building's users as to how they can best use that building to be a really wonderful experience for themselves, but also to be really sustainable, because there's a big performance gap. There's a big drop off in performance from how a building's designed and how a building's run. Your leak is just a kind of extreme example of that. But, we need to be able to make sure that we're running our buildings in the way that they were designed, and that performance kind of drop off that happens is reduced. Because otherwise all of the hard work that we do to design and construct a building is kind of lost when it comes to operation. So as an industry, we need to be supporting our clients, and whether they're tenants, end users or developers, to be able to have a product that they can run in a really smart, informed and sustainable way, in the way that it was designed. And so anything we can do to help educate our clients to use that product in a sustainable way is a double benefit compared to us, in terms of the intelligence we can put into the actual construction. So we need to think about the whole life cycle of all the things that we do, as opposed to, I think, I sort of call it the piss off party, like the PC party. Is like, we're all like, brilliant, it's finished. That's the start. That's in reality, that's the start of what we've created. And we can't be happy to sort of just get to PC. Really, that's just like the starter gun for the race of the building. And, we need as an industry to focus more on what happens after that, as opposed to just really focusing on what happens up to that kind of completion date. And there's great opportunity there for business to kind of really flourish and to support our clients in different ways.
100%. And maybe a silly idea again, but I think there's so many situations where it would work. Buildings are probably used about 50 hours a week. Where is there any way they could be used like 24 hours a day? The same building could be interchangeable. I know it wouldn't work in banking scenarios or different things from a security level point of view, but there has to be parts within the world that it would work in.
Yeah.
If there's a big building heated at night and there's nobody in it.
Yeah, no, I mean, and
that's what you're talking about in many ways.
Partly, yeah. I mean, partly they're definitely use. I mean, there are examples of where kind of commercial buildings have had their use extended out of the sort of normal business hours. There's always big challenges to that, security, like a whole load of things. But fundamentally, yeah, if we build something, we should use it, And so when we're developing a program for a building, an access strategy for a building, security strategy for a building, we're thinking about, how can we unlock the potential of this building for longer times? How can our clients partner with not-for-profit organizations, local clubs, schools, whatever it is that could benefit from that space out of hours, And it's a really hard thing to unlock. It happens more in the kind of public sector. So like schools get used loads over the weekend, for example.
Yes.
There's a great opportunity for us in the private sector to try and find ways of unlocking that. I think at the moment, it often, in my experience, falls into the kind of too hard bucket, and there's always some dude that says, we can't because of this reason or that reason. And they're all really probably very valid reasons. But if we want to, use this amazing city around us to its full potential, we need to try and find ways of unlocking those opportunities.
There's actually one interesting point. So in the moment, we've built a part of a new extension to our factory, which is housing a part of a robotic storage system. And that'll work 24 hours a day rather than the human beings that are there working sort of 8 or 10. But then we've been fortunate enough to build new training facilities. From a point of view of computer suites, we have 2 large rooms and we can divide it off. And once we get that finished, our intentions are, as a business in a small town, local community, there may be organisations, charitable organisations and so on, that may want that space over the weekend or at night to hold a meeting in or whatever. And that's just us doing that small piece.
Yep.
And it's just thinking, how do we make better use out of this? And we've had to build it. It's within our factory, but it's like a completely separate entrance.
Yep.
And we'll be able to manage from a security point of view that way.
Yeah, and that's because you're thinking about that during the design phase rather than, when it's open. And so you're able to build in those additional kind of considerations that would unlock that. Unfortunately, when it comes to kind of commercial buildings, that consideration at an early stage isn't always there. I mean, of course, every big building has a restaurant and an observation deck and all of that stuff. But that's really just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the carbon of that building. The rest of the sandwich or the rest of the cake is really where, the carbon is, not just a little bit at the top or the bottom. So, I think there's great opportunity for that. We need to be finding ways how we can engage more with the local community to use our assets in a different way. But it's quite a long journey to go on still in that respect, I think.
Yeah, but the fact that it's a conversation today does how it start to move somewhere.
Yeah,
and it is becoming a more and more relevant conversation.
Yeah. And I think that also links to, it's not so closely linked to, I guess, sustainability, but I mean, it is part of the lenses of sustainability. Is there is, as well as all these discussions that we're having with clients now on the planet, there's lots more discussions on people. So, how we can inject social purpose, social value into our projects at an early stage, how that can be done in a meaningful way. Yeah, more and more of our clients are really interested in that as well. And so, there's definitely been a big trend in the last 2 or 3 years, and we applaud that, to be honest, of like, how can we use this amazing vehicle, which is our projects, big, expensive, lots of people involved. How can we use those for a purpose, for good, for the local community or the wider community? How can this thing snowball into something really positive? Like, they're really interesting conversations we're having with clients at the moment, because true sustainability is about social sustainability, financial sustainability, and environmental sustainability. And so the social sustainability is a real aspect that we can all contribute to as well.
With little or no cost.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of being open-minded enough for that piece.
Yeah, and a lot of partnering and a lot of people just, putting in a bit of effort at the right time.
I like the way you break it up into social sustainability, environmental sustainability,
financial. Yeah, I mean, they're sort of the three lenses
that's
of
three nice parts. Sometimes when people talk about sustainability, they're just thinking of environment.
Yeah.
But we're talking about people's work-life balance. We're talking about how it could affect the community, how it can make a positive impact maybe on our children or on maybe the older side of the community that maybe don't necessarily have anywhere to go other than the 4 walls they live in.
Yeah.
So that's a great way to break it. So bringing around the conversation to more the point of the interior fit-out industry that we're in, Adam, you've been looking deeply and coming up with some great solutions around like demountable, reusable furniture, potentially reuse of some furniture and so on that was made 20 years ago and how it could be reconstructed. So I was in the perspective, Adam, do you feel, well, it's more than a conversation now about disassembly and stuff, but would there be merit in getting a wee bit more collaboration between people like ourselves, the builders, bringing the whole thing together to see could we potentially come up with something that would do a wee bit better?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's amazing in the last few years that the conversation around the circular economy, design for disassembly, all those things seems to be much more at the front of minds of clients and designers and supply chain. So that's brilliant. In fact, we've just launched, yesterday actually, a circular economy primer for interiors. Check it out. It's amazing, detailed, completely free, open resource that we've published globally, and our London studios contributed a lot to that. And that really, for me, is probably the most kind of progressive framework for designing for the circular economy when it comes to interiors. There's been loads of great documents similar to ours actually when it comes to architecture, but I think it's a really fantastic tool for people when it comes to interiors. So I would urge anyone to, it's a lot of investment for our firm to develop something like that, but we're here to help everyone raise the game, and so that's a great baseline, I think, for people to get into understanding about adaptability and those types of things. But yeah, I mean, I think it's much more at the front of people's minds. There's a lot further we can go. I think we are starting to get to a place where we're designing and delivering buildings that have the ability to be used again in future cycles, which is great from what we're doing. But unfortunately, there still isn't a kind of marketplace for that reuse to happen. So, there isn't a intelligent, cohesive reuse marketplace in London at the moment. There's some great people and we do great stuff. But, what we're starting to find is there'll be an economy that develops where we'll have products which can be reused, but not a marketplace necessarily for those products to be accessed within the supply chain. So that whole marketplace piece is something that really needs to develop at speed. It needs to be legitimate, it needs to be high quality, it needs to be well policed, it needs to have regulation, it needs to have sort of commercial boundaries. Once that marketplace matures, all these projects that are being designed and have been designed to be circular will have somewhere to go, to be found, to be used again in the next kind of 10 years or so. So I think that, that is where a lot of attention needs to be. And when you're talking about kind of collaboration between supply chain and different partners within the industry, how we can fast track that marketplace will be really interesting. And I think the other side of that, to be fair, is that we need manufacturers to start to take responsibility for those things themselves. And so we need to find a place where we can talk to manufacturers, whether it's raw material or product manufacturers or subcontracting manufacturers like yourselves, talk to them specifically about second life and reused products in the same way that we talk to them about new products. Some people are doing that. Sometimes there are some furniture manufacturers that we can say, show me what you've got that's new, show me what you've got that's second hand or second life. But we need to be doing the same thing when it comes to the supply chain. So I want to speak to a carpet manufacturer and I want to say, show me your grey carpet tiles that are new, show me your grey carpet tiles that are reused. And I want, at point of sale, we need to have those conversations, as opposed to it being a separate marketplace or it being third party people who are kind of managing that. We need manufacturers to take on that. There's a really interesting thing that's emerging as part of the EU, which unfortunately we're not part of now, but of course we can benefit from it, is called extended supplier responsibility or extended manufacturer responsibility. And what that means is if I make something and I sell it to you, I'm still responsible for it, which I think is a really powerful mechanism, because it means that I can't just make shit and then sell it and then walk away. Even if I've sold it, I'm still responsible for the kind of provenance of that thing. So if that's the case, I'm going to design something, or I'm going to design my business model, which means I can use that thing again, I can take it back, it can be resold. I'm going to have to rethink about how that asset is kind of let out into the world. So I think, as manufacturers, as designers, we need to think about our responsibility for that stuff after we've sold it, forever. And that will give everyone a much more kind of focused, conscious consideration of the stuff that we use in the world, the consumption that we have. So I really like that kind of philosophy.
Very interesting. I feel that even from a reuse point of view, what we've done, a couple of schools of late in the last sort of 12 months, was we had changing around classrooms and so on. Some things you find with schools that they may have had 7 classes of science rooms, and now that intake of pupils over a number of years has diminished, and they're wanting more home economics rooms. So a lot of that unitary is just could be removed. Some of it could be 3-year-old, some of it could be 15, but generally it's decent standard of stuff. So the last couple, what we did was we've given them to a charity that's building schools in Romania. I know there's a lead in the BREEAM, there's emissions in order to get this stuff shipped to Romania, but it did seem like a much more purposeful, at least this product was being used in another part of the world. And when we're talking about sustainability, we're not talking about a country or a city, although we can lead the way. So, there is potential there that there's stuff within the projects that may not suit the London market as a reuse, but may suit a market somewhere else in the world.
Yeah, and
somewhere else in the UK.
Yeah, and that's an important kind of third sector aspect of the circular economy. But, to sort of challenge that is to say that that's always kind of been done. What we need to be doing now is having that same mentality in the core sector. So, it's not good enough just to give it to people that would have it anyway, right? Because they would have it for financial reasons as well as for sustainability reasons, right? And that's perfectly fantastic, but we need to be doing this for, without the financial kind of like benefits. The way that I like to see it, or the sort of mindset someone said to me once is like, any major city, so take London, you draw a circle around the M25, there's an argument to be had to say that outside of kind of food or clothes in the construction industry, everything we need for every project is already there. If you think about all the things that are already within that massive diameter of stuff, every project you could ever build, again, everything you need is already there, right? We just can't access it. But we'll go to Canada and chop down a tree, bring it here to make it into a table. I mean, I know that happens less now, and there are obviously great forestry places in Canada, but it's really hard to go to a different part of the world, cut down a tree, bring it home, make it into a lovely table, take it to an office in London. That's quite a hard thing, right? So if we can apply that same, but that's an economy that's been happening for hundreds of years. If we can apply that same kind of complex work streams to what we already have, we could unlock all of this potential in London. So if you just think everything we already have is everything we need is already here, I just can't get to it. And if you could get to it, you'd unlock so much opportunity. And so, that for me is what reuse is like, you guys have a factory, but on a project in the future, your factory will be next door to the building. They'll be bringing stuff to you. You'll be remaking it and putting it straight into the building. Like those are the sorts of kind of process changes I'm talking about that we need to make. So that is a powerful mindset for me to think we already have everything we need. We just need to unlock the opportunity to use it. Waste is just a material without an identity. That's not my saying, someone else says that, but I think that's true. Like waste is really just, we just need to inject the identity and the opportunity into that, and then that can be reused again. So, some of those, they're quite high, complex concepts, but if you think about it simplistically, many people already live in that way. Many generations have already lived in that way. It's not a new way to live. It's just a way that we're not exposed to because we're very used to the benefits of consumption. And so, I'd love to do a project where everything came from within the M25. That's there are kind of like reuse targets. Is like keep it local, reimagine it, put it back. Like they're the things that we really want to be doing.
Taking us into a completely different conversation, but you probably know at this point I'm a farmer at heart and come from a farming community. But like that wee circular economy. When I go back at my granny and granddad's day, like they kept the cow for the milk, they had the calf, they kept the pig, they had the hens for the eggs, they had the vegetable garden. Everything was grown within their garden or small farm.
If they needed a shed, they chopped down a tree and made it into a shed, probably.
That's exactly what they had.
And so, of course, we can't do that anymore, but we can still take, the things that are really important about that. And a lot of it is actually around like great design opportunity and craft. Like that's the thing that we're really excited about at Perkins Will is, I think for 20 or 30 years, it's been really easy for designers just to specify new stuff, and you can specify loads of beautiful new materials from all around the world and you'll get it delivered and you'll pay someone in some factory to put it all together. And like, that's great. And it's really easy, but actually there's actually an amazing opportunity for creative enrichment, for understanding craft, to reimagine materials in new ways, to get back to some of the kind of approaches that we did in the past. And I think that for designers should be seen as an amazing opportunity. It's not a threat. It's absolutely harder to do that than it is to specify new things. So as a business, there's opportunities there for us to really think creatively about those solutions. And I think that's what, younger designers in education, they should be inspired by the opportunities that brings from a creative perspective.
100%. And even go back into that, like good furniture that was made like 100 years ago, real antique furniture today, is equally as sought after as it was then. It's still expensive as it was then. And it's like, you talk about longevity of a product. Maybe in many ways we could learn something from the generations that went past, is that maybe if we make really good stuff once and we make it last 100 years rather than 5 times for 20 years, or there's something in that.
Yeah, I mean, longevity and timelessness are one of some of the key tenets of sustainability and of the circular economy. You buy an amazing jacket and it lasts for years and years and years. You just keep using it. It will change. You'll get patina to it. You'll repair it. You'll hand it over to your kids. Maybe like that is that's not about design. That's just about longevity. It's about caring for things. It's about having to consume less. It's probably about spending more on it in the first place, which is. That is a big challenge at the moment. Not everyone is in a privileged position to be able to pay more for something because of those things. But I think if you are in a privileged position to be able to afford that, then you should be thinking about those things.
100%. So, and especially as we have a moonshot goal, Adam, for the next 10 years, which takes us up to 2034, where do you see the industry and fit out that we're all involved in here, and sustainability? If you were thinking of a moonshot, where would you like to see it at in 10 years' time? I think that's a good starting point for any of us, to have a dream and a goal.
There's so many things, right? There are so many things. I think having the process in our industry in London, which allows us to continuously drive down the consumption of new things and the use of virgin materials, would be a really great place to be, because this, a lot of this is about reducing the extraction of raw materials from the earth. Trees are great. They sequester carbon. You guys are a joinery company. You know all about the benefits of timber, and we'll always use timber, and it grows again, and that's great. But obviously, not every virgin or raw material is self-generating like timber is. So, all of this reduction of consumption is about, taking less out of the planet and, the scars that leaves behind. So I think really reducing the amount of new stuff that we make or buy or use would be a really fundamental change. I think having this opportunity for every designer and every client at every choice to be able to say, I want new or I want existing, and I'll take the benefits and the compromises that come with that. And at every decision point in our industry, that choice is there. I think that would be a really great change.
So just to clarify, that's a piece of the carbon data versus financial data, and what the benefits of both are, to allow clients to make that at every...
Yeah, and also that the marketplace is there, that people who have always made new stuff are also embracing the reuse and selling of stuff they made a while ago, and that they find, and it's not an easy business model, but that there's the ability for that business model to be sustainable for business and for the planet. That there's no point us idealistically saying every manufacturer should sell secondhand stuff. That's not necessarily going to support. This links to one of the lenses of sustainability around society, is we want people to have jobs, we want people to flourish, we want communities to flourish. So we don't want to have an industry that only serves the planet and doesn't serve people. So we need the business model for reuse and for the circular economy to be sustainable for businesses, and in fact to be attractive to businesses. So that would be a great progress in 10 years if the circular economy has developed business models that businesses can grow and thrive off the back of. That would be an amazing moonshot, I think.
And listening to you there, like, you're touching on some of the things that we've sort of thought about, and but certainly haven't developed any further. But we're a manufacturer and we buy new stuff most of the time. Sometimes we would buy like second-hand pane beams and different things, and use them for maybe mantelpiece tops. They're very nice pieces of timber. The probably the stumbling block for us in that, Adam, is that the cost of space, the energy to keep space, storage, then the longevity of time that it takes to maybe get these things reused. And that's potentially one of the blockers to that happening. But I wondered, and it's just a very off-the-cuff remark, what would it be like if we were, so you talk about the M25 in London, if we as designers, we as manufacturers, we as contractors within the complete fit-out industry here in London were to create a cooperative that where we could take the materials from different buildings that could be stored, we could employ the right people and put the right computer systems in place so they were under your nose and they were in front of every designer, every contractor, so that we knew what was there. Like, to me, that would be sharing the cost, that would be doing something very responsible, and that would potentially be driving real change. Or does that sound...
No, I mean, that's, you're talking about the Strudwick warehouse there. That's the thing that I've been trying to get going, and lots of people have been trying to get going for a long time, is, the ability to find the economies of scale where that works. And it doesn't, the economies of scale doesn't work for an individual company level, but it does start to work if you have more people coming together. So, my dream of an electric lorry driving around London, picking stuff up from sites from everyone, taking it to a place to be sorted and resold, that's the future of that moonshot in terms of the economy. We have struggled for that to kind of get legs, through various reasons. But there are multiple people doing that in smaller ways, So there's some people who are doing that who are focused on maybe lighting and ceiling tiles, for example, which are two quite easy products to kind of spin and flip around. There's people that are obviously really doing that when it comes to raised access floor. I mean, secondhand raised access floor in London at the moment is like buying gold. Like, you can't get hold of it.
Yeah, it's more expensive than new stuff.
Yeah, it is more expensive than new stuff. I mean, you can probably buy gold a lot easier. I was going to say something else then, but it was illegal. But, it's really hard to get hold of. People are trading secondhand raised access floor like you trade illegal substances. It's amazing. So, we're getting these third-party groups who are doing amazing work and, really focusing on certain packages, and kind of making that stack up as a business model. And I think that that's really important. I do think this centralized warehouse would be beneficial, and I think I've spoken to many main contractors about, trying to collaboratively deliver that together. It's going to take someone to sign a lease on some space or to give over some space. There's a lot of, there is some financial cost to that. There's risk associated. Those things you said about storage costs, this sort of just-in-time requirements around this. Timing and program is really one of the key things that kills a lot of reuse opportunities. So there are lots of barriers to that, but I think we need it. But I think that isn't to say we need the manufacturers to take responsibility more directly, and that will be the end game. And the quicker we can get there. So I'm talking like, British Gypsum taking responsibility to go back and collect reused, unused plasterboard, and then reselling that. Like, that's where you need to get to, because they've already got the storage, they've already got the logistics. Of course, there's lots of risks and issues with that, but that would help. So I think the sort of centralized warehouse is an intermediary step to manufacturers ultimately being the people that buy and sell this stuff. And that's where we need to get to for it to really hit a level of scale that I think will make a difference.
Yeah, but I suppose that intermediary piece could be got going. Like, if we decided as an industry and we got 40 or 50 key leaders involved, we're prepared to not only have the conversation, to take action on it, to spend a few pounds on it, we could be at the very beginning of something very special.
Yeah, absolutely. And myself and many other people have had those conversations and tried. And, we've spoken to people like Amazon to see if they can support it, because they already have a lot of the pieces that are required.
The
infrastructure, marketplace, logistics, storage. Not that I'm a big fan of Amazon, but they have that stuff in place. And but for a business like that, it's really hard to think about things like this. So someone that can bring together logistics, warranties, storage, a marketplace, that's what we need. And there's lots of people trying, and it's just how we coalesce that together is really what we need to unlock things, I think.
You mentioned warranties there. That's one. So we've taken off about 160 fire doors off a project about a year ago. They were all paint grade, reasonably decent standard of fire doors. So we felt these could potentially be sanded someday. They could either be over veneered or painted a different colour. And to us, it was a decent idea for reuse. But we're coming up against that piece of regulations. It looks at the moment that they'll never be used on a new building here, because we can't stand over. They might be one of our fire doors, but they don't. When you put this different ironmongery on them or veneer on the front of them, that hasn't been tested. So that's regulations is sort of blocking that again.
Yeah.
And there should be nothing wrong with them. If they're one of our fire doors 15 years ago, they should still be one of our fire doors.
Yeah. I mean, fire, I think, is the one subject where people use as a barrier to reuse, which, I think is very real. I think we need to think smartly about how we can work around that, but that barrier is always going to be there. But I'd say, could those doors be used for something else?
Right? We think they'd be in the housing market or something.
Exactly. Or can they be cut down and used or something? We need to be, the reuse is, there's kind of like loads of different streams to reuse. Recycling is the kind of worst, just reusing it. But reimagining materials is really where I was talking about the creative opportunities, the craft, like how we can reimagine materials in new and different and valuable ways. That's, a really big part of this. It's not just going to be finding a round peg and putting it into a round hole. There's going to be loads of different shaped pegs, and we need to find ways of getting them in the right place. So that's where we need to be thinking about reimagining in the same way that we just think about reuse. 160 fire doors is a great opportunity because there's a good volume.
Yeah.
Volume's another key indicator of success when it comes to reuse. But fire is, a very realistic challenge to some of this stuff.
But imagine we were involved, as we talked about earlier, collaborating earlier on the job. And as you said, there's some of the stuff now within the industry allowing that from a design perspective. But if we were able to say, look, Adam, we have these 160 fire doors, there's the sizes of them, you could potentially use them for flooring. I'm not saying that we work or not work. They could be used for wall panelling of some description. Yeah. There's loads of many uses. They maybe could even be used for the toilet cores within the jobs, the unisex toilet cores that probably fire inside that fire block. They're not.
Yeah.
It's just about knowing about these things early.
Yeah, exactly.
So even the warehouse side of things, if we were to have more of an online digital platform rather than actually the warehouse, because we can store some of this stuff in our factory and ensure our competitors could do the same, and the different people that at least there was a platform to look at it in one place. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just like your Perkins Will have given out a piece of information to the market yesterday, which will hopefully educate us all in how we could do a wee bit more for our environment, how we bring a wee bit more demountable and regenerative furniture to the market. Maybe it's not a matter of renting storage, the deer piece. Maybe the wee bit that each of us could do is collaborating some sort of software that has that all sitting in the one place.
Exactly, yeah, and that's the marketplace, right, that I talk about. That's the marketplace, and we're working on a project at the moment which has a huge reuse emphasis, and our contractor has an amazing Excel spreadsheet which has hundreds and hundreds of products on there that we are assessing for reuse. And we know that if we only use half of those things, the other half could be for someone else. Like that is actually probably one of the most detailed marketplaces in the London market, I think, at the moment, and it's just on our project. And so if we can find a way of that information getting out there more and being added to more, that would be the benefit of everyone. And that's why there's a lot of investment now on material passporting. So all the projects we're working on now, we're following material passporting approaches, and we're injecting the asset information into the design so that whole marketplace is there. It's in the cloud. It's all verified. It's all asset tagged. That can all be injected into this great big thing that you mentioned. And then when those projects come up for reuse, it's all there, and I can just search 165 doors and it'll pop up somewhere, and I can know who I can speak to. So, the projects we're doing now, it's not good enough to just design them for disassembly or reuse. We have to inject the data into them so that people can find them easily in the future, and we don't have to scour the market because it's all there. So, asset tagging, BIM models, injecting data into material passporting will mean that when we do this whole cycle again in 10 years, it's much easier for us to find the right things.
Find where the stuff's at.
Yeah, exactly.
So how do you think BIM modelling, I was reading the wee passage you had last night and LinkedIn on, but how do you feel BIM modelling can help us with the whole piece?
Well, I mean, that's the whole thing around material passporting. If you if you, I mean, digital twin is a bit of a kind of sore subject at the moment. But if you have a digital model of your building and you have every single thing in that model asset tagged, so you have your fire doors that you mentioned, and it says, you can put a QR code on the fire door, which is a kind of basic way of doing it, or you can have it in the model. And so when I inherit that model in 10 years' time, because we're refurbishing your building, I click on that fire door and it pops up a data sheet, tells me about the warranty, tells me about the fire rating, it tells me who I go and speak to if I want to change those fire doors, it tells me who made those fire doors, it tells me, how much value is in those doors. All of that stuff is in the model. It's going to make it much, much easier to then reuse that again in the future.
100%.
And that should go down to the door, to the ironmongery, so I can speak to the people that sold the ironmongery and they can say, yeah, we can refurbish it. We have a plan already. We'll come and collect it. We'll refurbish it. We'll give you X amount of money for it. We'll resell it in the future. Like, all of that intelligence is in the model, which means all these conversations, these nebulous conversations we have about finding stuff and warranties will all be less. Yeah. And so, the more and more projects that can have that, and I think material passporting at a detailed scale at an interiors level is quite early, and it's quite expensive. There's a whole bunch of different kind of providers doing things slightly differently, and maybe at some point that will become simplified. But it's great that these firms are basically developing business models to start up business models to try and plug that gap in the industry that we have. And so certainly the projects we're doing that have a detailed material passporting approach, we just need more of them, and the more that we have that do that, the more benefit there'll be.
The easier it gets.
Yeah.
Roll-on effect.
Yeah.
Well, here, Adam, if you were a listener today, is there any one point that you would like to make that you feel would be a benefit to any listener? I always say that in these podcasts, for me, the benefit is if one person gets some level of benefit from our conversation today, and I must say I am that one. I've learned a lot from you on the subject today. If there's one person gets something from it, we've been successful. So we went like you on using 50% of the product. If you use 50% of the products that have been put in front of you for a project, there's 50% for somebody else. If one person gets something like this, I think we'd be successful. So
Yeah.
if you're giving some listener advice on how to help us build a more sustainable, more circular economy, a better word for simplicity, what would it be?
Gosh.
For you, from your own heart, because you see you can care about it.
Yeah, I mean, I do feel like understanding that we have to reduce the consumption that we have is really important as a starting point, and whether that's the meat that we consume, the clothes that we wear, the construction materials that we specify and use, like we just all need to consume less, and I say that from a position of privilege, and it's not everyone is able to make those choices. And I think that's a very important thing to understand, is not everyone is able to make choices that are more sustainable.
Yeah.
You have to remember that. But I think if you are, and you are in a position to be able to consider that, just thinking about reduction of your consumption in small parts makes a massive difference. And it doesn't have to be a change to how you design or how you live your life, but just understanding, the things that you consume can have an impact on the planet. And if we all did a little bit more or had a little bit less, it can make a massive difference. And in the world that we're living in, which has so many risks and concerns and people struggling, it can be quite hard to hold on to that sort of minutiae. And, of course, we have to remember all of those other struggles. But I do think that if everyone could do a little bit more like that, it would make a big difference exponentially.
Thank you very much. Well, it's like anything in life. If everybody did a small piece more, no matter what we got to do, it can make a massive difference. So,
Yeah.
At this point, Adam, I'd like to thank you for joining me today on the Specialist View podcast. It's been great having you. Just great having that conversation, the openness, the honesty within it, and in fairness, like, it's no wonder if we could educate people to care, and I think that's the one key message that has come through in all of this. It was the very starting point for you. If you actually care about your environment, you care about sustainability, you care about the next generation, it's much easier educated on how we do something about it, because we're all on a learning curve around it.
Sure. Yeah.
and you can see very clearly you care. So thank you and well done, and I hope this has been enjoyable for you.
That's been great. Yeah, thanks very much. Yeah, thanks for having me.